My void will consume you, if you ask nicely.
Your will is no longer your own.
Stay away from the voodoo. Toi!
You have led the Horde to a place without honor.
Your petty quarrels only make me stronger.
Our world needs us, champion.
You got it over your head.
We cannot let the world fall to darkness.
Already lost.
Put your faith in the light, and all is possible.
Is it truly righteousness that drives you? I wonder.
It would seem you have guests.
They are coming for you. This is the Whispers of War.
Hello everyone and welcome to Whispers of War, show number 53. I'm your host Sil and you might hear it, I am sick. I'm not doing too well. I got the lurgy. Of course I get it over the weekend because, you know, best time to get it, not while I'm in work, but I think it is called Fresher's Flu, as we like to call it in England. I'm not quite sure if this is also what it's called in America or other places in the world. I work for a university. We had a lot of people come in, new students, and I think they've started to infect the place. So I must have caught something. I'm not doing too well. So if I sound a little bit lethargic or not uppity, then that's why. I'm basically dying here, but I did want to bring out a show. Right, so let's jump into how was my week in WoW. I am very sorry to say that it's not really been a lot of retail WoW or BFA. I did do some missions just from the mission table, just because I still want to get some reputation for certain factions, so I might be able to purchase a mount in the future for those. And that's really it. I still plan on leveling all my toons. Absolutely, because I know that Classic won't be there forever. You know, it won't keep my interest forever. Let's just put it like that. But for now, I am very solidly into Classic. I don't know really why. Right, let's be like, rose-tinted goggles are off. Let's be very, very honest with you guys. So I leveled my mage. I did several dungeons, I was having a blast on my mage. You know, it's always nice, especially when people compliment you and say, wow, that was really good sheeping, or mages do sick damage. All mages do sick damage, you know, you don't really have to do much for it. You could just smash your face on a keyboard and they do sick damage. But it is nice to hear. And yeah, so I was enjoying my mage until I reached level 25. So around level 25 until 30, I think that's that point that for a lot of people, the grind is getting real. So for Horde, I was all over the place. I was in Stone Talon Mountains, I was in Ashenville, I was in Thousand Needles is where I started, a little bit in the Southern Barrens. And I was even mob grinding at a certain point, which is just mindless. And not as great for experience as it used to be. Or maybe, again, those were those rose-tinted goggles. But it was a lot of work. Yeah, it does give you a lot of gold. Or at least it gives you enough silver to get some gold. But it's not as amazing as so many people make it seem to be. You know, there's a lot of YouTube videos out there, but how to grind gold, how to power level, and I have a suspicion that a lot of these guides were made before this actually went live. So either it was done on a private server, or it was all fairy crafting, but it wasn't, or maybe beta, and things have been changed in the meantime. Because I've seen people complain in the comment sections. And for me, I'm just like, you know, running back and forth, that takes a lot of time. And I'm just not enjoying that part so much. So I'm a little bit like, yeah, some of the questing, it's fine. I don't mind the occasional mob grinding, but it was very, very samey on my mage. So it was just like, okay, well, I have to sit down because all my mana's gone, and evocation only takes you that far. There's a cooldown. I'll have downtime again, and as soon as there were 2 mobs, I could sheep something, but then there was all of a sudden a third one would pop out of nowhere and just eat my ass, and that was it. It was dead. So it was corpse running more than anything, and yeah, I just did not enjoy that anymore. So the rose tinted goggles have most definitely been dropped, but not enough, because I just thought, okay, well, how did you do this in the past? Well, I leveled the druid. So I just thought, let's just go back, because I was still feeling rotten anyway this weekend, so I couldn't sleep, and I thought I'm just going to play on my night elf druid for a little bit, because that will give me a little bit of, I guess, nostalgia, hearing the music, seeing the sights, and I really enjoyed it, because it was just mindless, and I didn't feel like I couldn't pull certain mobs. It was just a little bit more comfortable with playing, and I know that sounds really weird, but it felt really comfortable. And then I thought, okay, so what am I going to do on my Horde server, because I do want to do lots of stuff there, and the guild is really nice. And I just thought, I'll just level my Tauren druid. So the more I play her, the more I actually really, really enjoy her. You have to really, and that's one thing that I kind of have forgotten from playing druid now, you really have to utilize all your shape-shifting abilities. Go into bear to make sure that your mana is regenning. Start off with pulling as a caster, then shift into bear. I don't have cat form yet. That is very painful. So it's all a bit slower, but you really can survive a lot longer. Honestly, I feel like I've survived a lot more on this druid than I have done on my mage. And I think that I will enjoy cat form a lot. So I'm sticking with the druid for now, which is really surprising. And maybe, I have been saying, oh, maybe I should have started with druid, and because I was thinking druid or rogue, and then I switched to mage. But I'm surprised. I'm surprised that I really am enjoying druid. The only thing I don't like, and this is me, I hate Kodos. I'm really sorry for all the Kodo lovers. I hate them. They're too big. I hate the running animation. What kind of running animation is that anyway? And it's just not for me. So I need to grind rep with Ogrimmar to get a wolf, because I want my Tauren druid to ride a wolf. Or even the Frost Wolf one once Alterac Valley is out. So that will be phase 2, isn't it? When we get all the battlegrounds, but that is something I will work towards. So I just thought, with the druid, it doesn't matter that much, because I get travel form when I'm 30. I'm not in a massive rush then to get my mount, so I can just grind the reputation for Ogrimmar. I'm in the Barrens now anyway, so I'll hand in the cloth later, because I forgot that you could do that. But yeah, you can hand in cloth, I think it's wool, to the representatives, and you get reputation. So I'm just going to do lots of quests to see where I can get my rep up, and then whatever I still need to get exalted, I'll just work my way through it with cloth or something. So that's really the plan, and that has really triggered the love, or at least the enjoyment, in Classic again. Let's see where that goes once I'm level 25 on the druid. Because I hear from a lot of people that 25 to 30, that's the point where a lot of people are like, ugh, I'm not enjoying it. We shall see. We shall see. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, that's really it for World of Warcraft. I am going to leave you with a really, really, really fun interview I had, and a very thought-provocative interview with Mandi. We talk a lot about character motivation, or morality of characters and races. So it's really a topic that will make you think of why certain actions were taken by characters. it certainly has made me think a little bit, especially now with role-playing, and I do want to start role-playing again in Classic, just to see if it will take me back to my roots. So yeah, it's really interesting, and I'm quite curious to hear your thoughts about it. After the interview, I will come back with anything about pop culture in World of Warcraft, and I will see you on the flip side. And with me today, I'm being joined by a guest who's been very flexible in her time to accommodate me, I have to say. I'm really, really happy and pleased with that. Welcome, Mandi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show. And like I said, I think you're based in America, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I'm actually in the state of Pennsylvania, so East Coast.
Yeah, it's always a challenge with, not for Americans, but it's very challenging with anyone who's not in Europe to set up times and make it work, because also time planners or the time converters on the internet lie to me at times and go, oh, well, you're here and you're here. This is the time that it should be, and 9 out of 10 times it's not. So it's always a little bit awkward. But no, you've been amazing with trying to make it work for me as well. Because I'm old and I can't stay up late, otherwise I'll just fall asleep. So I'm really happy about that. So Mandi, this is all about you though, not about me and my old ass. We're talking about you. So why don't
my old ass?
Oh no, that's not what I'm saying. No, not at all. But maybe you can tell the listeners a little bit about who Mandi is.
Well, I am, I guess, obviously female in my 30s. I started playing World of Warcraft consistently halfway through Legion. I tried to play during Burning Crusade, but at the time, I actually had a terrible internet connection. We couldn't connect on for anything, and we only got reliable internet about 3 years ago. So I wasn't really into gaming so much. But then one day I was having a really terrible, awful day. Kind of a cliche, I'd gone through a horrible breakup. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just do something and completely forget about what's going on. And I did a internet search and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that game. I'm going to see if I can play. And it's been down the rabbit hole ever since then.
I think that's how it started for many of us. So when it all started, what did you roll? Did you go for Horde or did you go for Alliance?
I rolled Alliance originally with a human paladin, but I think I only got to about a level 40 and I was just like, I'm not into this. Okay. Yeah. So you switched? I did. I switched over to, now I play, my main is an arms warrior, blood elf for Horde. Okay. Cool. I like that. I like it. Because I remember that back in the day, blood elves weren't allowed to be warriors, were they? That came, I think, after a patch or something? See, yeah, that's what I've heard, and I have gotten a few in-game eye rolls going, you're playing a warrior and an arms warrior, really? And I'm like, yeah, I'm guilty of it. I just like the slower rotation of it because it lets me just kind of zone out and think about other things while I'm playing, too. So... I know some people like the frenetic energy of playing some of the other classes, but I just kind of like to plod along, so... In all fairness, I've been having a blast on my warrior, so, you know, I kind of get where you're coming from with that. Okay, so you are firmly set in the Horde side then, and you said, you know, breakups and everything, relationships, that's how you got into WoW, but... How did it really start for you that you were like, oh, this is the game for me. I'm so in love with this game now? Well, I've always liked things that have been a little, I guess, they make fun of themselves. They don't take themselves too seriously. I've always been really interested in things that have a lot of fantasy and sci-fi elements. And the Warcraft just seems to have all of that all together in one. I guess you might already be obvious from my earlier statement, but I grew up being obsessed with Alice in Wonderland. That was, you know, my favorite media book show. And what I liked about it was that it was so ridiculous, and I also enjoyed that it was also, in my opinion, pretty misunderstood by a lot of people. A lot of people look at it and go, oh, well, it's about this girl who's on a psychedelic trip. And I'm thinking to myself, no, it's about a girl who's terrified about her circumstances in the world around her. Mm-hmm. And while Warcraft's like a very silly game, I kind of get that impression from the gameplay as well. Mm-hmm. Like there's all these absolutely ridiculous elements happening around, but it's also, if you put yourself in the perspective of the character, it'd be terrifying to live through. And I just think that that's so fascinating to play. So yeah, I guess when I play, I kind of like role play or have a headcanon for my characters.
Yeah.
I don't actually RP, but I'm thinking in terms of, well, my character's thinking this, my character's thinking that, and I go along with it that way. So that's how it hooked me in.
Do you feel like you've been given more of that chance, especially now on the Horde side, now that you have to start picking a side with Sourfang or Sylvanas?
I do, yes. And honestly, with my main, I did have her go along and be a loyalist right up until, spoiler alert, right up until the decision for her to execute Bane. Mm. With that was basically the breaking point for my character. Like, she'd just been dumped in Nazjatar, and she was like, what on earth is Sylvanas trying to kill me for? Like, she's gonna kill Bane, and I've had enough of this. And that was kind of like, in my head, her breaking point. Mm-hmm. So it's been interesting, and I've liked having the different options, but I'm really interested to see where they go and how they will have that pay off for us, because they've been promising us that it's going to affect our gameplay, but I'm really interested to see how it will, because I'm not quite sure how they'll be able to handle all the divergent storylines that potentially opens up to.
Yeah, absolutely. That will be interesting. Okay. So now that we've already talked a little bit about, conflicts and decisions that we need to make, you had a really, really interesting topic that you wanted to discuss. So your main topic is a little bit about, pop culture in WoW, right. Also how it ties into how people are and the decisions that we make, and that then ties into all the morality of each and every race that we have in the game.
Yeah, what I think is really interesting about Warcraft, like I touched on a little bit earlier, is because it is so silly and there are so many pop culture references in that. I know they drive some people nuts, all of the puns, the quest titles that refer to either songs or books or movies, and all the little NPC characters, like the one Zandalari troll named Brittany that sells spears. That comes to mind. But what I think that does, and why that's really clever on behalf of the development team and the writers, is because it draws the audience in, or the players in, and makes them feel like that they really are part of that world, because there's little touchstones of our own reality in Warcraft. Mm-hmm. So it takes a really fantastical world and makes it relatable to us on a level that we understand. And it also involves a lot of emotional shorthand for the writers. Mm-hmm. So instead of having to build up a huge, emotional storyline, they can maybe throw in a thing like when we were originally questing at Darkshore at the start of BFA, one of the quest lines on Horde side was called Killer Queen. I mean, obvious reference throughout that entire quest campaign to different Queen, the band songs. And to me, like, music and the emotions behind music is easily elicited just by even just reading a lyric. Mm-hmm. So in order to have, like, say, we have that lyric or a song title of Killer Queen, it takes all of the emotion and the thought behind that song and puts it in the background for the quest line. So they might not write out completely in the text very explicitly, hey, Sylvanas is a badass here. You know, she's going to kill everybody that she possibly can. But it's implied by the different song titles or different movie titles that they might put in. And that goes with a lot of the other things too. They may throw in a silly pop culture reference to a movie or a TV show, but there's a lot of subtext that ends up going along with it that's running around in the back of your mind, whether you're conscious of it or not. And I think that that's, some people would argue that it's lazy, but I think that it's actually really clever of the writers to do, because they are taking us on this silly journey. I mean, we have knights and dragons, and we have space goats, and like all these things technically shouldn't work together, but yet when they mix it all together and tie it in with things that we can relate to in the real world, it somehow works.
Yeah.
And on the other half of that, going into as far as morality, I've seen a lot of people arguing about, say, and as a Horde player, I'm going to be siding more along with Sylvanas on this. A lot of people saying that, oh, certain actions that certain characters have done have been so abhorrent. And I think that that's where Blizzard kind of came across a double-edged sword with their pop culture references and having us relate to everything so well, that they are leading the audience or the players along to put their own morality over top of the different races in Warcraft. One of the things, and I've mentioned it briefly on my Twitter, is that it surprises me how many people go, well, Sylvanas is acting without honor, you know, she's a horrible person, which, of course, you know, is true if we look at it from a human perspective, but she's not a human. You know, she's not even within her own race anymore. She's no longer an elf. She is undead. So why would we expect her to think and behave in the exact same way that we do? And one of the things that I see, you know, personally for myself that has happened with the Horde quite a bit is that the concept of honor is constantly mentioned, you know.
Yeah.
It's like it overlays everything in the game. And honor is typically thought of adherence to what is right or conventional standard of conduct. Well, as players, we're overlaying our own standard of conducts on top of what's essentially a bunch of alien races. Humans are native to Azeroth, but orcs are not originally. You know, they're from another world and they transferred in. There's very few of the races that are actually playable that we can relate to on the same level that we would as a regular human. And what I see that the Alliance does a lot of is they actually use the concept of honor as a weapon against the Horde. And I know I can hear people being like, oh my God, you know, right now. But if you think about it, they keep pushing this narrative of you have to have honor, you're dishonoring yourself. So they're taking something that's really almost sacred to the orcs themselves and using it against them in their campaigns and in their wars, saying, well, you're not honorable. And almost every single time that they have pushed that narrative and been like, you are behaving without honor, the Horde loses. And I think that from some, maybe like a character like Sylvanas' perspective, she's going, well, wait a minute. They are literally taking all of these orcs and all of their concepts about honor and using it as a weapon against us and making us weaker. And I do see, like, from her perspective, like with Starfang, going, you are literally walking right into what they want you to do. This is exactly what I was warning you about, and you're not listening to me. But I just think that it's really, interesting that, of course, as players, we are going to project our own humanity and our own ideas onto these characters, but inherently, they're not human. And also what goes on with a lot of it is, for me, the concept of unreliable narration, where we only see things from a certain perspective, especially if you only play one faction or the other. We're only getting limited information from characters who have limited information themselves. So then we run into that. Well, we're going, oh, well, I think that this is bad because of this and this, but we're only getting maybe a sliver of what's actually happening. And I think that that's really fascinating. So when I see a lot of people on the forums or on Twitter going, oh, well, I can't stand BFA, I can't stand what's going on with modern retail, I go, well, there's so much that you can explore. It's almost like a video game playable version of Choose Your Own Adventure. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you had those books when you were a kid, but I was addicted to them. And there's just so many different nooks and crannies, and like if you put yourself in the perspective of whichever race that you choose to play as, I think that it would actually enhance the gameplay for a lot of folks. I know that there's folks that just want to play dungeons and raid, and that's cool, but there's also tons of folks who are interested in the lore. And to me, I guess one of the best analogies is, like, it's a rough one, but you don't get mad at a dog for acting like a dog or a cat for acting like a cat. You know, you expect them to act as they are and as their species dictates, or their attitudes dictate. So to look at, say, all these different humanoid races and go, well, they're not behaving this way or that way, well, why would we expect them to? And ow, sorry, my cat's getting angry. I said cat and he's decided to take a nibble. No. He's like, I'll show you morality. Stop ignoring me. But yeah, he totally made me lose my train of thought.
That's what cats will do.
Yes.
Do you feel like there are certain races out there that, if people would dive into them a little bit deeper, like some of the misconceptions that are out there, would actually, it would make more sense of why they are acting a certain way that they do? Do you think there are certain races that really stand out for you with that?
The Nightborn, I think, are one, because I have seen a lot of folks say, why on earth are they still with the Horde after everything that they went through in Legion and everything that they see happening now? With their complete isolation that they went through, and especially Tyranda's behavior towards them in Legion, I think that, you know, if you were looking at it from their perspective, they'd be like, well, why on earth would we want to be anywhere near them? Because they were horrible people to us. And orcs, obviously, I think are one race that, if you look at them, in a lot of ways, they really, to me, represent a lot of struggle. You know, they left their homeworld because they wanted a better life. And you could say, and I'm treading lightly here because of political implications, and I don't want to get into that, but you could say that, yes, they were trying to create themselves a better life, and they were trying to immigrate, and they went about it horribly, but they were doing it from a perspective of literally trying to save their families' lives. And I think if people looked at it more from that perspective, it might give them a different insight into gameplay. And even the humans, I think if they looked at it as in, the humans have been invaded, they feel threatened, and they are going to be using any means necessary to try to protect what they believe is theirs and was originally theirs. So one of the big taglines that they had with BFA going into it is, you know, there's two sides to every story. And I think that that is really true, but there's even more than two sides. There's a million sides to all of these stories. I am a little frustrated with how they aren't going into a lot of the different races' perspectives, and they're kind of going on the sidelines. Like, I would love to see more about how the Night Elves are dealing with the fallout of Teldrassil.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, all that we've basically gotten from it is they're really mad. Well, yeah. They're really mad, of course. And while I appreciate that they do leave a lot of blank spaces there for people to fill in on their own,
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like that's not something that the player base is inclined to do, because they are thinking about it from a human perspective. And they're not really inserting themselves into that avatar and going, okay, well, I'm a night elf and this has all happened. And because the folks that I've seen, again, in the forums online who do that, have been generally the folks that have seemed like they are still enjoying the gameplay with this X-Pack. And the folks who don't really do that as much are the ones that are saying, oh, it's trash, I don't like it, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah, because it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? I mean, having played a Night Elf for years, really, and RPing with them, seeing that happen, and then the fact that, for me personally, it just felt a little bit like, oh, well, we got a new war front out of it, and that's about it.
Yeah.
You know, you see the whole Night Warrior thing happening, and in all fairness, for me, it was like, well, I have a new cosmetic look for my Night Elf now. It's like, you know, you don't really feel weirdly invested. It does something with you when you see it, but that's more the cinematic almost than the actual thing that's happening. And you're a bit like, afterwards I thought, okay, well, I'm a Najatar now, and yeah, I don't care what happened to the world. Apparently I can easily just put that to the side, and that's really it. So it is sometimes, I think, you know, when you really think about what's happening as that race, I don't know if you would be like, yeah, okay, it's fine. I'm off now for killing some Naga, and that's really it. I don't know.
Yeah, like, especially if you're role-playing as one that is thousands of years old, you know, not necessarily new to the block, and it's just like, oh, well, I guess that happened. Now I'm off to Najatar. Like, okay. I think that they would have a lot more backstory and depth and feeling about what was going on with that. I do think that the developers and the writers intentionally leave a lot of space there so that people can fill in their own story with it. But I think that's, while some people will do that, it just really frustrates a lot of others. Yeah.
No, I agree with you, and I think with a lot of things, I guess this is also spoiler for those of you who have not played through much of 8.2 with the whole saving of Bane, you know, and then that Bane gets teleported back to Thunderbluff, and the remark is being made, oh, Sylvanas will now come for Thunderbluff. It makes you feel like, okay, if I was a Tauren, how would I feel about all of this, you know? Because where do you stand at a certain point? Where does your allegiance lie? And with all these, like, especially on the Horde side, I feel like there's a big division and divide going on between the races.
There is, and there's a lot of discussion. Like, even in my guild, people are completely torn in half. You know, half of them are still completely loyalist, and the other half are like, you know, burn her, you know, she's a witch. And for me, I said I wasn't gonna, you know, go down this garden path, but I guess I am. Sylvanas' actions made a kind of horrible logical sense right up until Bane. Because I read Before the Storm, and to me, that was a big political clusterfuck of epic proportions. The whole book, because you have Anduin there with Kalia, and Anduin approaches Sylvanas and says, "Hey, I want to, you know, reunite Forsaken people with their families." And she's like, "Okay, sounds fake, but we'll try it." You know, she went into it expecting the worst, and from her perspective, Anduin fulfilled the worst expectations that she had of the meeting. So, in from her perspective, I can see her going, okay, I went into this meeting paranoid, but in good faith, and you tried to usurp me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Anduin's just like, going, well, I didn't know she was going to do that, which you should have known better, buddy. Yeah. But, I mean, anyway, she sees, okay, he tried to usurp me, excuse me. And then he's completely surprised when she goes to war.
Mm-hmm.
But from her perspective, I can see her saying, well, he's the one that already declared war. I'm just following through with his threat. And so I was like right with her with going, okay, it makes sense that she's saying that they want to strike against the Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
And especially it made sense to me that she wanted to strike Darkshore, less because of the elves and more because of the way that they harbored the Gilneans.
Yeah.
Because Gilneas would be the primary force behind telling Anduin, you need to push and retake Lordaeron. Because Greymane has always been, very hardline. We need to take Lordaeron back. We need to take Lordaeron back. So any aggression on the part of the Alliance, Sylvanas would say, hey, they're coming for my city.
Mm-hmm.
Greymane's making his move. He's making Anduin his puppet. I need to cut this off. Who's their main support? It's the Night Elves. I'm going to, take over Teldrassil. We'll just take care of 2 of the Alliance races at once with 1 strike. So I'm like going with her, okay, makes sense. And as horrible as the burning of the tree was, and again, this is from my own human perspective going, oh my God, Sylvanas, you've lost your freaking mind.
Mm-hmm.
I can see also from her perspective going, okay, we can't hold this city, especially with Tyrande and Malfurion still kicking. If they were out of the picture, they might have been able to hold the city. Maybe. But with them still around, there was no way that they would have been able to hold on to that place, especially when she was looking at a mirror of herself during the invasion of Quel'Thalas, and with her own self in the role of Arthas, like all of the emotions that would be rolled up into that. I wasn't surprised when she snapped and was like, we need to just burn it. I didn't like it as, for myself, but as the perspective of my character, she was still like going, okay, I see why she did this. And so my character went along with it. And like I said, I see so many things like, and I guess, I don't know if this will endear me to anybody, probably not, but part of the reason why I understood it is because I feel like if I were Sylvanas, I would probably take a lot of the same actions. If I were an undead elf who had been shunned by everybody who had ever meant anything to me, by my sister, Illyria when she left, by my other sister, Verisa, when she had approached me and said, yes, I want to join you, and then she shunned me, and even going back further than that, going to the Alliance and saying, well, hey, I freed all of these people, and isn't it great, and we're here to help, these are all these Lordaeron citizens, and we're free from the Scourge, and them going, nope, we don't want you around. I don't know. To me, it was almost understandable. But again, that's going into the whole, am I imposing my own ideas on it? Mm. Or am I looking at it more from the perspective of one of the different races of Azeroth? And I'll admit, sometimes I give myself a headache thinking about it. Like, am I thinking about this as me or as my character? And that's when it's like, okay, it's late. I'm shutting off the game and going to bed now.
It is really interesting, though. I think especially, people are very, very invested in the lore, and maybe also our peers. It's just, it does make you think, because what you said made me actually wonder, when I was so shocked, because I have been maining Horde for a very long time, I do jump back to Alliance because that's where my roots are, and also because I want to see both sides of the story. But
Right.
when I had to do this for the first time as Horde, I was a bit like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
We're doing this? I like this, but I think that's probably because I'm looking at it from just as me and not as my character who is also a blood elf, and just looking at it like, yeah, who cares, just burn it, and that's a part, and I'm like, that's really interesting, because I'm sure I've done more things in game that maybe as the person I'm like, oh, I don't know about that, that's a bit weird. Yeah, why would you do that? That's so strange, what's wrong with you? Whereas maybe from that race perspective, you would actually go, no, actually this is really clever, or this is exactly how they would respond to something like that.
And I do think that's been, again, minor spoiler for the latest patch, I do think that that's something that has been addressed by Orthamar in the Najatar campaign, when he says we have to be very careful because Sylvanas still has the love of the people. So he's outright saying, the majority of the Horde still supports her. And that made me kind of step back and go, well, if we as the players are going, well, what is she doing? What's going on? What would make the majority of the Horde still think that her actions were good? And it's like, well, because they're not thinking about it the way that I would. Especially, like, say, why would the orcs in particular support her? And you might say, oh, it's because they're a war-driven race. But I don't think necessarily they are. I think that they see themselves being threatened, and they're responding to that, because I do believe that for her own reasons, Sylvanas has amped up that narrative that I'm doing this to protect you. I'm doing this to protect all of our own interest. And so that's a very powerful motivator for anybody. Be like, well, hey, she's looking out for us. She's trying to protect us. We need to do what she's saying. And what I think is so interesting and really kind of clever about how they did the writing with this expansion is that each side is saying that to their particular races or to their particular people of, we're doing this because we have to. Especially, like, say, Anduin going, well, we have to respond to her threat. Did he have to march on Lordaeron? No, not really. He didn't have to. I mean, you could say, of course, they needed to do something about what they did to Teldrassil, but did it have to be that particular action? I'm not convinced of that. Yeah. Especially with the precedent that we've had with war crimes, with the trial of Garrosh, he could have easily said, hey, you went over the line, we need to capture her. And especially with the way that the lore has been written in the past, who's to say that they wouldn't have sent in an elite force and taken out several Horde leaders and been like, we're just gonna start over. So to me, it's kind of like choppy with that, but at the same time I'm going, well, why did he react that way? Well, I need to think about it from his perspective. And this is something that I actually did a little dance. I had commented on somebody else's post on Twitter about people not liking characters when they're introduced, and I had mentioned something about how I have to look at it from, why do I dislike this character so much? 90% of the time it's because they're exhibiting traits I don't like about myself. So, like, for me, say, one of the characters that I've always had the most difficulty relating to is Jaina.
Yeah.
And I've realized, just even within the last few days, it's because I'm really probably more like Jaina than I'd like to admit. If my boyfriend was like, hey, I'm going to go in and kill everybody in this city, I'd be like, later, dude, I'm not sticking around with this. Good luck, you're on your own. And so a lot of the things about her that make me go, oh, why is she doing this? It's because I'd probably do it too. And I had commented on that, and then Christy Golden had retweeted it, and I was just like, oh, over the moon, I'm like, oh my god, this is a sign that this is, maybe the Warcraft writing team is thinking the way I am about this. So yeah, I was a little bit of a dork about that, but I was just like, it is something that, and I know I said it's a silly game and all of that, but in a way it kind of functions as therapy for me, because I can look at different things and see things from different perspectives and go, okay, why am I reacting that way to this? And then I walk myself back through and go, well, this character reacted this way because of this. Why did I have this reaction to it? So it's kind of a challenge to myself to play, and I've been accused more than once of overthinking things. A big shock, I'm sure. But that's, for me, one of the best things about playing this particular sort of game where you can immerse yourself into it is because even if you are not consciously working through things, it's running around in the background of your mind. So, again, like with me going, oh, Jaina, oh, why did she do that? Oh, because I'll fully admit with her particular character, I always have that initial kick of, ugh. But then I take a step back and go, well, would you do anything different? Probably not. And then I'm like, okay, fine. Okay, Jaina. But, and again, I might as well just call this particular episode Unpopular Opinions. But I can hear people like shutting off the buttons now. Oh, well, she doesn't like my wafu, But
yeah, but the thing is, I do think that what you're saying there makes a lot of sense. The more and more you, because I think a lot of us would react the same way. If I know that if my boyfriend would say, I'm going to kill everyone here in this town, I would be like, okay, well, have fun with that. Bye. Yeah. And yeah, I can definitely see it, but again, I think it's very difficult because people love certain characters, and then you see them act a certain way. You're like, oh, I don't know if I'm happy with that reaction. How do I feel about them now?
Right.
Whereas for them, it makes a lot of sense, I think. But I think we have a tendency to, and this is so different what I'm saying now, but it's just because it just popped up in my head. But I've been watching a BBC show called Serengeti, and much as I loved the cinematography from it, the views of the Serengeti and everything, the story is utter bullshit. Because so much in there is just trying to relate to humans, to people, by saying, oh yes, the baboon felt like this, and I'm like, wow, that's an assumption, because I don't know if it did, and they're weaving the story, but I can see why, because if you give it certain emotions that we feel, or we can easily relate to it, so we can buy into that story a lot more. And I have the feeling that sometimes with Warcraft, we have a hard time not putting our current emotions and how we look at things from a world that is basically, when do we really have to face like with other races that are out there just purely to either kill us or have different motives, or things that are undead, that right. Everyone, it's such a different way of thinking that I think for us it's really difficult to relate to a world like that, but yet we still try. And
we can only really approach it from our own point of view, because that's all that we really have and all that we've really related to. But I kind of think of it in terms of, well, if an alien race did just happen to fall out of the sky, how would we interact with them? Well, of course, we'd view it from our own point of view. And maybe this is having grown up as, like, with parents that were total Trekkies. But, like, so much of things on, like, Star Trek was them always saying, well, we're going to try to approach these alien races and meet them halfway and see if we can understand their culture and what they're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that, say, and I don't necessarily even blame all the characters, but I don't know that the characters in Warcraft do that, and I don't know that us as players do that. Or if we just are like, well, hey, I'm gonna roll a goblin, you know, because goblins like gold, and I want to earn a lot of gold. You know, I think that we kind of put that onto it, but we're not really digging into not just the Warcraft lore, but say fairy tale history. You know, what were goblins in fairy tales? And I think if we look a lot more at different source material from what maybe the Warcraft writers are inspired by, my big love is, of course, fairy tales, fantasy, things like that, and go, okay, well, they have said that the goblins like gold because of XYZ, and it would kind of deepen our understanding of it that way. I know a lot of people don't want to go there because, oh, it's a game. I want to raid, I want to get my gear, I want to kick everybody's ass and leave and log out. Okay, but I guess I'm more of like the lore nerd going, I want to understand everybody's motivations, I want to see everything that's going on and try to get it from as many perspectives as possible. And I guess looping back into with morality is that there was an article I read, I forget who it was written by, I thought I had it written down, but they had called a lot of the actions of the Horde in Sylvanas toxic selfishness versus Starfang's community-driven honor. And where was that from? Oh, it was from lovethynerd.com that I actually saw that article on. And what I think is interesting about that perspective is that it makes me think, what is each race individually fighting for? Are they fighting for riches in the case of the goblins? Are they fighting for honor in the case of the orcs? What are their different motivations? And that leads me into going is, well, what is their individual moral compass and what is their social morality or each individual character's personal morality on it? And I'm just like, you know, my head will spin around with that going, okay, so within their own social structure, this is important and this is important, but this individual NPC may view things this way. And yeah, I just go from there. But
that would be a really good way also for, I think for role players, it's a really good way of looking at things like that for their character.
Well, honestly, I have thought about getting into roleplay, but I wouldn't even know where to start. I have a tune rolled on a roleplay server, but I kind of feel like at this point with some of my individual tunes that my personal headcanon would clash so much with whatever the roleplay community is doing that I would be like, wait, what? And have really bad, a really bad time.
No, but I still, you know, talking from a role player's perspective, I see many people who play their races still quite unique. Of course, you have like the large chunk of, for instance, trolls role play it a certain way, just because one, it's easiest, and second, that is something that, for instance, if you go to WoW Wiki, you will get that background, you get a little bit, okay, this is what I've seen most of the time in game. And I think it's only like a handful of people who will really go, okay, from the race perspective and what they've been through, is this something, you know, I don't think people would nitpick in the details of how would I feel about certain things that have happened. Or do I just go with, well, we're in the Horde and that's fine, and we're very close to the orcs, so we side with the orcs, or, you know what I mean? But I do believe that this would actually make you think about your character a lot more, which for me is always a lot more interesting than just following the general consensus of, okay, this is how I need to think and this is how I should roleplay, just because it could make your character much more fleshed out.
One thing that I don't know if this is actually a thing that some streamers do, but I would love to see, and you know, anybody, if you do this, tag me on Twitter. I would love to see if people stream from their character's perspective and actually speak out loud what their characters are thinking as they're streaming. I think that would be really fascinating to see a role player do that. You know, even if they're just tooling around doing world quest, I'd love to see them be like, oh, well, my character's thinking about this as they're going and collecting all of these buzzard beaks, you know? Like, I would just think that would be really, really interesting to see on a streamer, and I haven't come across anybody who does that. So if you're out there, please ping me.
It would be a sort of new view on, you know, where you see like the D&D streamers, the tabletop streamers, to actually see something like that. That would be really interesting to me as well.
That would, yeah. And even if there's, say, maybe a small guild group or a group of friends that roleplay together, to even just have their audio overplay while they are tooling around in the Warcraft world, that would be really kind of cool to see, I think. But see.
Yeah. No, I like that, even if it was on YouTube, because the only role players so far I've seen on YouTube are the not so serious ones that make me laugh a lot. I'll have to say that. I really do laugh a lot when I see those videos, because it's mostly calling out Goldshire antics, which are funny, but still not really what we were looking for. But you know, I do like that. I might have to go down YouTube and see if I can find anything like that. But yeah, no, I like that idea. Right, Mandi, is there anything else that you want to say regarding this topic, or shall we jump into BFA?
Oh gosh, I think I've probably babbled about this enough and confused everybody. Like, what is she saying? Did she smoke before she got on here? or a lot of people are starting to wonder now about their characters and what they're playing, and like, oh, how would my character? I'm sure that is that, and not anything else. I promise, no edibles, no smoking before I signed on.
Hey, you know what? I'm Dutch. I'm all cool with that, so that's fine for me. Right, let's jump into BFA then. If you had to pick, what are you most impressed with when it comes to BFA, and what are you the least impressed with?
I probably would be most and least impressed with, and I've harped on this earlier, with the writing. What I think is really fascinating about the writing with BFA is that you do have all these unreliable narrators who don't know what's going on, and that makes it really kind of realistic to go into the story and be like, well, this person doesn't know what's happening, and this one's doing this behind that person's back. But it's also really frustrating because I think it almost starts to tread into soap opera territory, which, don't get me wrong, I grew up watching soap operas with my mom. I love a good ridiculous romance novel the same as anybody else, whether they admit it or not. But it's just, it's fascinating, but it's also really, really frustrating. As far as mechanics, I really am not crazy about the Heart of Azeroth system. And I think that's because the Legion artifacts were just so amazing that anything that they tried to follow it up with was going to fall short. With the Legion artifacts, you had all of the class customization, and you had all of that history, and you had your own order hall, and it was just so fascinating to play through, and it felt really special. And with this, it's like, oh, well, here you're Azeroth's champion along with everybody else. Go save it, you know, fill it with this, you know, blue gold gunk and get more powerful. And we're just kind of like, yay. And especially with, spoiler alert, especially with the things that start to happen with Ajara's raid and with the old god stirring, and it being pretty well implicated that, yeah, this was all just a big ploy all along for the Heart of Azeroth. It makes me feel like, why are we still powering it? Especially if you've already completed the raid, why on earth are you still filling this amulet with power after it was used to free an old god? Like, what are we doing? Why does this doesn't make any sense? So that, I don't really like that about the system, and I also feel like it's kind of, I like being able to personalize my character with a lot of different buffs for it. There's some of the things that I've gotten that have helped out my PvE playing immensely, but it's super frustrating to have to go and reforge items if you want to go and do PvP, or you need to go and reforge it again for, I want to go and tank in this dungeon instead of DPS. So then you have to go and reforge your items again to get better, and you're just spending so much gold for so little payoff that it just feels really clunky to me. Or at least with the Legion artifacts, you could swap them out. You could be like, okay, I'm gonna throw on my shield and I'm gonna go tank. And you didn't have to recalibrate everything and dump a lot of gold into doing it.
Mm-hmm.
As far as traits that I've liked them doing, as far as gameplay, I don't know. I'm really enjoying playing ARMS. I am kind of dedicated to that now. I'll probably even play it if it becomes the trashiest, worst class to ever play. But I do like how the balance has worked out for that one with BFA. I do think that it's a lot stronger than it was in Legion. And I like being able to add different things that help me with my everyday gameplay in it. Like, I like being able to say, I need a resounding shield because otherwise I'm kind of squishy and I'll die. But I don't know. I guess it kind of goes hand in hand with the writing. I like being able to have the different traits that the Heart of Azeroth gives us, but I wish that they had done it in a different method than having it just be one neck piece. I feel like if they had done it with a lot of different traits that you could customize and have be more permanently bound to several different items, it would have been better. It's kind of like, we're giving you customization, but not too much customization.
Yeah.
Which I get, because the game is almost exclusively grind-based, and they want us to be on there, the little gerbils on our wheels, going and going and going. But even though that's the basic premise of the game, is they want us to be on there as much as possible, doing as much as possible, it does make it more frustrating for somebody who's not super dedicated to the game.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I play a couple hours probably every night if I can, but I'm nowhere near as invested as some of the folks who play are, and I see where their frustration comes from, because if I'm coming across it even just with my gameplay style, I can't imagine what folks are fighting against when they take it a lot more seriously and they get into arenas and they get into heavy and competitive raiding. That would drive me batty.
Okay, well, you made some really good points there, actually. Do you have any good tips for the listeners when it comes to Battle for Azeroth?
I guess my main tip would be, if you get frustrated with the storyline, there's so much else to do to explore. There's all these little side things and a lot of hidden secrets that they've added in, which I think is really great, because if you're like, you know what, I am just so sick of Warfronts, I don't want to do another island expedition, you can go and start doing one of the secrets and maybe get a secret pet, or start doing achievements. I'm a big one for achievement hunting. I love to go achievement hunting, and I don't know, it just makes me feel accomplished and like I actually did something. But I would suggest that if you're getting really frustrated and burnt out on just doing world quest and grinding, just go exploring. I found so many different little hidden caves. There's so many dive bars the Tortolans have in different parts of the zones. Just go out and experience the greater world, because the developers and the entire staff created such a rich world to explore. Like, you don't have to just go and start bashing heads in. You can go and pick flowers for a couple hours and just see where it takes you. It's a different type of gameplay, but it's, I think, equally rewarding.
Yep, very true, very true. And I don't know, it's like what you said. I always thought these secrets, it's so much hassle. But actually, having done some of them, I actually really had a really good time, and it actually makes you go, okay, well, I have to prep for this. Where do I go for that? How do I tackle this? It's, even though it's already like done for you, you still have to think about certain things, especially for that goat that you had to get.
Yes. That damn goat.
Oh, that took a little bit. But it was, I mean, afterwards, you really feel like you achieved something, even though you're not the one who had to try and find all the clues in the beginning. You know, you're just following a path. It's still quite an achievement, I think. So
yeah, the secret finder communities, they're the real MVPs. I mean,
absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know how they do it, but wow, yeah. But you know, if you're really bored, you could always be part of that, I guess.
See, yeah, there's just so many Easter eggs that, especially in this X-Pack, that they've done, that when people are like, oh, there's nothing to do, I'm so bored, I'm like, really? You know, like, how have you blown through every little bit of content that they've released? To me, like, I'm still, even though I played through most of Legion, I still have things on my achievement page that I'm like, yep, I need to go back and do that. Never got that one done.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Okay, so what has the Warcraft community meant to you personally?
Personally, I've met a lot of really friendly people on there, and it has helped me through a pretty rough few years. I had mentioned earlier that I started playing because I had a bad breakup, but like my personal life kept getting crappier from there. Just to touch a little bit personally, my mother had a pretty severe stroke. I'm her full-time caretaker now, so being able to go on and do something like go into the Warcraft community and just talk to people and not think about things that are necessarily going to affect my day-to-day life. Like, I can think about all of the different morality and how it ties into pop culture and all that silliness because it's a good distraction from something else that's happened.
Yeah.
I take care of her, and I'm also in the healthcare industry, so I see a lot of people who are really struggling day to day. So I like being able to just, you know, pop into the community and be like, hey guys, what's going on? Have them go, well, God, I can't wait for Classic to get here. This is crap. And I just really enjoy having people there who we kind of have our own language, and you can just say to them, you know what, I'm not having a great day. And they won't ask you too many questions about it. They'll be like, want to run a dungeon? You can be like, heck yeah. And just not think about it for a while, which I think is really great.
That's good. And I think that's the great thing of having found people in game and just, you know, having people who share that same love for something. Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people use Warcraft also to escape some of the stuff that you have to deal with in life. So that's good to hear. Okay, now we get to the final question, which is the weird one, as always. Mandi, what is your whisper? And for those just new, a whisper can basically be anything. It's just something like, what would you want to see happen in the game story-wise, or maybe game mechanics, or what would you rather change? What would your whisper be?
Personally, I would adore to have a third faction option. And I think that they have it already built into the game and into the lore. And I would love to see that third faction be the Kirin Tor.
Ooh.
We already have a home city of Dalaran there. They're already canonically neutral as of right now, with Khadgar leading them. So I just think that that would be really, really fascinating and a really awesome thing for a lot of players, especially because I see players say, oh, well, why can't I play a highborn elf? Well, you could if you were a neutral in the Kirin Tor. So and you could be like, okay. And I kind of started thinking about that because of Hearthstone, with not the newest expansion, but the previous one, where a lot of the gameplay cards, there's a particular card, lost the name of it in my head now, but there's a guard, and when you play the card, she says, it's not just the city of mages. And that voiceover made me go, it really isn't just the city of mages. They have guards, they have townspeople. Why can't we have a third separate faction and have it be based out of there? And I think that could potentially be really interesting, because then people who are like, no, I want to stick with the Horde, or I want to stick with the Alliance, they could still have that and still have those home bases. But the people who are more like, I want to fight for Azeroth individually, they could have that third option. And I think it would be really interesting to have those players be able to go into each other's cities too. Like say, if you are a Kirin Tor based blood elf, you can go into Stormwind. That would be fascinating to me. Just like from, I guess, a quasi role player point of view, but also from a gameplay point of view.
I like that.
I'm not quite sure how they would pull it off, but that's like my dream fantasy scenario. Like I would totally re-roll my character onto that third neutral faction, like in a heartbeat.
I really like that idea. I think it's been said so many times, but that a lot of people say, we need another faction, or that would be really cool. I like that. I like it with the Kirin Tor. I think that would work.
I'm just going, they already have a home city. They already have it established. They wouldn't even have to build a new model. They could just be like, okay, Dalaran's your city now. Instead of Orgrimmar or Stormwind, that would just be your home base. And I'm like, okay. I guess I miss going there in Legion, and I miss having that feeling of like community with players from all across all the races. And I'm kind of going, well, how could I get that? I kind of wish that I could do that, so...
Well, who knows? They might surprise us in any future expansion packs. You never know. I mean, we thought the same thing about Pandaren, and that will they go Horde Alliance? Well, they can go both. We always thought, no, that's not going to happen, and it has. So, who knows? Yeah. I like that idea. All right,
little pipe dream.
Mandy, thank you so much for the interview. If people wanna find you on the internet, where can they find you?
They can just find me on Twitter. My handle is Mandi Mayi, MandiMayi. So it's literally my name, Mandi Mayi. It's a bad pun. Yeah.
No, I like it, and I'll make sure that I also put this always in the show notes, so anyone who wants to find you can find you on there as well. But again, thank you so much for being an amazing guest, and I really, really like the topic. It's really something that has made me start to think about my characters now, especially with Classic on the horizon and me rolling on an RP or maybe RP PvP server. I thought I'd figured it out, and now I need to think about what I want to play.
I don't want to confuse people, which I feel like I just did, but...
No, I think it's good. Like I said, it gives that extra little bit of depth to my character and how to play it. So for me, that's all about extra fun. So no, I think you did a wonderful thing with that. So yeah, and I'm sure other people have thought that as well. So thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you for having me.
It was lovely having you.
So I hope you enjoyed that interview and that it made you think a little bit about why certain races do certain things, and maybe you look a little bit different towards your own characters now. Who knows? But let's go to Twitter and to your answers about what is your favorite pop culture reference in the game. And Jessamine said there's a quest in BFA, pretty sure it's the Alliance War Campaign, called Mischief Managed, and I sat there humming the Harry Potter theme for an embarrassingly long time. Jessamine, nothing is embarrassing when it comes to Harry Potter. Just hum it along as much as you want. I hope that we get more Harry Potter references, in all fairness. The scruffy druid lady said, I love the NPC Adele, who is rolling in the widening deep in Town Long Steps. See, I love this because now, hearing all of this, I'm like, I forgot all of that. I need to
see that again, because Pandaria, I haven't really been there for like a really long time. Nick Z said, Thresh's Wharf in Stormsong Valley is chock full of pop culture references, but the two most notable are Land Sharks and a Guardians of the Galaxy style finale. I like that. That's good. I really like that. Tom M said, just a tip quest was funny. Just a tip. Sai said, my favorite is the Lincoln quest line in the original Angora crater. It's a multi-zone quest that's just a good time. I remember that one. And didn't you get something like a Triforce and a Boomerang as a reward? Something like that. Mess said, for me it's the Indiana Jones stuff in Oldham. It's just so much fun in an otherwise lackluster expansion. I like the Indiana Jones stuff. It started to become a little bit tedious, I have to say. At a certain point you're like, oh, I just want to continue now. Scruffy Druid Lady continues, also the D&D game being played by the missing cadets in Borealis. They are in the garden by Proudmoore Keep. I need to check that out. Maybe I've missed that. Muffburger said, I have a lot that are old, like the Arakoa being Skeksis, and there's so many more that I think about along the way, but forget. In BFA, I really like the Kermit and Miss Piggy reference. Oh yeah, I like that one too. That is really, really cute. Mess said, oh, you remind me of the Monty Python reference in Drustvar 2. See, there's so much. When you really, really go looking for it, there's so many references there. So, yeah, I like all of it. Draylel said, okay, so there's an NPC in Talar, Nagrand, that I never noticed the name until I logged in directly in front of it one day. I still giggle. Moi BFF Jill. This was a cellular commercial. I didn't... But that must be something... American or Canadian, because I have no idea what that refers to. Navok said Harrison Jones, because I love the Indiana Jones movies. I do like that we have a character like that in-game. The Spooky Good Girl said the names of the tellers in Stormwind's Dwarven District. The Ted and Marius Excellent Adventures quest in Legion, and any achievement or quest named after a song. I like when I can go, oh, I know that song, and off I go to my music player to listen to it. Maybe we should do that, you know, all the songs that are in game and make a playlist or something out of it. That would be pretty cool. Jennifer the Pumpkins, okay, I'm not going to call you that, said, as an 80s baby, the Gem and the Holograms reference, 4 little NPCs named Jerica, Aja, Kimber, and Shana. At Darkmoon Fair always make me smile. Oh my god, I love Gem and the Holograms, and is it Aja? I can't remember them being in the Darkmoon Fair. I need to check this out now. And it would be really cool if they would actually also sing. But, okay. So, Jackie said, Geordie Lapforge and Blade's Edge Mountain engineering trainer. STTNG, how much? I have no... What is that? Star Trek The Next Generation? Am I correct there? Oh yeah, Geordie LaForge. Okay, yeah. Now, I'm sorry, my nerd cred is back. I know now. I'm blaming being sick, guys. That's what I'm blaming it on. She continues, there's so many, though. That's very true. There's loads. As you guys have just proven. Ali said, the lovely Aleandra said, oof, there's so many, and I have a hard time choosing just one. Over in Deepholm, there's a quest called Trogsor, the Urfinator. You have to stop Trogsor before he urfinates the countryside. And your rewards were pants called Urfinating Peasant Leggings. Okay. Lorene said the Robin Williams Memorial off the coast of Spires of Iraq. Oh, I forgot about that. And Kristen said Indiana Jones and Oldham for sure. Indiana Jones is very popular, so that's a good thing. So you guys had lots to say, lots of references, and I always hope that we'll get loads of those back in any expansion that we're getting, because I think it's nice. I like these pop culture references. It makes the game fun, and we all need a bit of fun in the game. I want to give a shout out to Dalek Kupo for her amazing tweet that she, I'm going to say she, I'm just going to assume gender here, I'm really sorry if it's wrong, said, I just want to say I recently found your podcast and I really like it. Thank you so much. It's always really appreciated. You guys have always, so many people have sent me some messages with all these sweet things that you said about the podcast or me, and I really appreciate that. So, yeah, I'm really sorry that it's a little bit of a... to steal it from Talia's and Never Tell shit show this week. I'm just going to blame my my very infected brain with the lurgy that I'm all over the place at the moment. So yeah, I'm hoping that by next week I can actually breathe again. That would help a lot with oxygen to my brain. So I'm going to leave you with this. You can find the show, of course, on whispersofwar.podbean.com, where I sound much more coherent in the previous episodes. On Twitter at whispers_of_war, or my personal one at McMonkeys with a Z. My email whispersofwarpodcast@gmail.com. Twitch /McMonkeys. I have streamed. I have. But it was it was short. It was very short, but no one needs to see this lurgy. And McMonkeys is with 2 Z's on there, so just go to twitch.tv/McMonkeys. I will see you all hopefully next week with a lot, better health and more sense and everything. And hopefully I will have broken that dreaded 25 to 30 level curse in Classic. I will see you all next week. Have a great time in Azeroth, and I hope that you don't get the lurgies. Bye!
This show is brought to you by Dragon Powered Studio. Find more at dragonpoweredstudio.com.